Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen. Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Inshallah ta'ala, today we will enter into the chapter on Zakatun Nabat. In our last lesson we were speaking about zakah pertaining to the livestock. And the author mentioned a few conditions on the compulsion or obligation in zakah when it comes into livestock. So one of the important things I need to study in our last lesson is that وَأَن تَكُونَ سَائِمَةً فِي كَلَإٍ مُبَاحٍ. When it comes into livestock, it has to be sa'ima. Sa'ima, what we can understand, any livestock any that are grazed any on a pasture, that is mubah, kala mubah, that is not owned any by anyone. This is the meaning of kala in mubah. So we can imagine, for example, if a person has sheep and goats and he let it out any in a pasture, like places in New Zealand, Australia, where they don't earn any there, they don't own the land. It is an open land. Then only zakah becomes any compulsory. So if a person owns sheep or goats or camels, and the owner himself give the food to the livestock, then there is no zakah. So here this is a very important thing, and we have to differentiate the animals. Who is the one who is giving the food to the animals? If the owner is the one who gives the food to the animals, there is no zakah. But if the animals are left out in the wild or in the pasture, then there is zakah. So the logic behind this is that if you own any animals and you are the one who gives any food to the animals, then you are spending a lot of money on the food. So there is no zakah. But if you do not spend any of the money, but instead you let the animals out in the wild or out in the pasture, now the zakah becomes compulsory upon you. So this is basically a summary of what we have covered in our last lesson. So now we enter into Zakatun Nabat.
Faslun wa wajibun ma shariba. Faslun wa wajibun ma shariba. We have read the first fasl of Zakatun.
Faslun
Wa wajibun ma shariba bi ghairi mu'natin.
Oh, okay. Tamam. Okay, bismillah. Yeah. So we spoke about Zakatun Nabat, So we have reached, let me see, okay, we have reached the part where the author speaks about the nisab, or the obligation, what is the percentage of zakah when it comes to vegetation. So we spoke about the conditions of zakatun nabat also. Now, number one, we mentioned that fil aqwats, the first thing the author mentioned, la tajibu illa fil aqwats. I think I explained what is the meaning of aqwats, and it is staple food. In the madhab al-Imam Shafi'i, we say zakah is only on staple food. Zakah is on staple food. We have difference with the Hanafi madhab in this regard. But as far as in madhab al-Imam Shafi'i, when it comes to seedlings, it is only pertaining to staple food. Meaning we have to ask the question, is this any plantation any staple food or not staple food? So there is zakah on rice and flour. Rice is a staple food, qut. Likewise flour in certain countries. Then only there is zakah. So there is no any zakah, for example, on vegetables. Vegetables is not considered to be qut, unless if a society makes it as qut. It also depends on the situation. So this we mentioned, when it comes to thimar, there's only two types. In madhab Imam Shafi'i, number one is tamar, number two is inab, dates and grapes. Other than dates and grapes, there is no zakah. There is no zakah on zaytun, although Qawl Qadim mentioned there is zakah on zaytun. There is no zakah on durian, oranges, apples. No zakah. Only on tamar and inab. So, and then we spoke about the nisab, khamsatu awsuq, where the author mentions situna sa'an. All of this we mentioned in the last lesson. طيب. Now we go on to where we are. Continue.
فصل وواجب ما شرب بغير مؤنة العشر وما زوجي بمؤنة كالنواضح نصف كالنواضح نصفه وما سقي بهما سواء أو أشكل ثلاثة أرباعه وإلا فقسته ولا تجب إلا ببدو الصلاح في الثمر واشتداد الحب في الزرع.
So now the first thing the author already mentioned, what is the percentage that a person has to give as zakah. So it depends. Whether if a person and he has a plantation, how does he water the plants? How does he water the plants? If he water the plants by himself, meaning he put in money for the water system. Like nawadih, the author give an example as the nawadih. Nawadih is a water system anywhere. The water is pumped at a certain place, and then it moves all the way the plantation anywhere. The plantation, attain from this, get from this water. So if there is a cost in watering any of the plantation, then the zakah is ushur. What is the meaning of ushur? Ushur is 10%, basically 1/10. In Sahih Zubat, and he mentioned, he said, fa'mal walau bil ushri kaz zakati takhruj bin nuri min az-zulmati. Yani he said that you practice the knowledge that you have learned, even though it is 1/10. Tamam? Yani he said that practice knowledge. Fa'mal walau bil ushri. Practice what you have learned, even if what you're practicing is just 1/10 of your knowledge. Takhruj biha takhruj bin nuri min az-zulumati. That you will attain a light and of guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that will save you from the darkness. So al-ushru in the chapter of zakah is 10%. 10%. So for example, if a person harvests 1 ton of rice, then it is compulsory upon him to come out 10%. So how many? 100 kilograms. 100 kilograms as zakah. This is in a situation بغير مؤنة. بغير مؤنة, meaning a person is depending on rain, for example, without any cost from him. So this is ushur. But what happens if you use nawadih, or nowadays you have this electronic system where water is sprayed on the plantations, then what is compulsory is 5%. Binisfihi. What is the half of ushur? What is half ushur? 5%. If you say ushur is 10%, half of it is 5%. So in this situation, it is compulsory upon him to pay 5%. So if he harvests, for example, 1 ton of rice, the zakah is how many? If he used his own cost of watering any of the plantations, then it is compulsory upon him to pay 5% instead of 10%. 10% if he depend on rainwater, for example, depending on rainwater, depending on the rivers, and so on and so forth. So he has to pay 5%. If he does not depend on the rainwater, for example, natural water from the wells and so on, the water comes from himself. There is cost in watering any of the plantations. So it is compulsory upon him to pay 5% instead of 10%. So this is what the author mentioned. وَمَا سُقِيَ بِمَعُونَةٍ كَالنَّوَاضِحِ. Nawadih is basically a watering system used in the olden days, where they pour water at a particular place, and then the water goes into this we call it the alleys, and then all the plantations receive that water. This is nawadih. So he has to pay 5%. Binisfihi. Wama suqiya bihima. Now what happens if there is cost in watering of the plantations, at the same time also he's depending on the natural water. So how do you calculate now? So now it becomes a bit complex. So now it depends how many percent do you water the plants, how many percent you depend on natural water, how many percent you use your own water, how many percent use natural water. If you say 50-50, for example, 50% I use my water for my own, 50% I depend on rainwater, then it is compulsory upon you to pay 7.5%, meaning the 5% is for sure. But then come the next 5% and you take half. So 2.5% of the next 5%, you add up to the 5%. So meaning the 5% is something that is sure. But since it is a 50-50 thing, we take half of the 5%. So that is where we get 7.5. This is what the author mentioned. Bihima sawa'un ushkila salasatu arba'ihi. Salasatu arba'. Yani salasatu arba' yani is 7.5%. 7 yani from 3 quarters. 3 quarters of ushur. 3 quarters any of 10% is how much? Yani 1 quarter is 2.5%. 3 quarters any is 7.5. Wa illa fa biqistihi. But now if you say, for example, I use my own water maybe 60%. 40% is natural water. You can do the calculation. So what you do any is the 5% is for sure. Correct or not? And then when it comes into the next 5%, you break it into 60-40. So how much any you get? You have to calculate. Yani 60% of the 5% and 40% any of the 5%. Clear inshallah? Wa illa fa biqistihi. But if a person and he says no, 30% yani I water the plants, 70% I depend on natural water. So now it becomes 30-70. Clear inshallah? So that is how we calculate. So now any 5% and we break any 30 and 70. So that is a percentage that we get. Then we add to the 5%. Clear inshallah? This is how we calculate. So the calculation is based on the percentage of the amount of water that you use, that you pay, and the amount of water that you get from the natural sources. Clear inshallah? And then the author mentioned wala tajibu illa bi buduwi salahi fi thimari. Now the author speaks about when is the time where zakah becomes compulsory. When comes to fruits is bi buduwi salah. So now imagine you have dates plantation. Dates plantation. When does zakah becomes compulsory? When the dates are ripe. When the dates are ripe. Because before the dates are not before the dates becomes ripe, there is no obligation for zakah. So this is the point where we say the obligation of zakah begins. The obligation of zakah begins when upon ripeness. When the fruits are ripe. Now the obligation of zakah comes in. A person has started to do the calculation. How much is my zakah? For the dates that are ripe, has it reached nisab or not nisab? What is the nisab? Nisab is khamsatu awsuq. Khamsatu awsuq is about 600 kilograms. So now if I do any calculation on my plantations, if I were to harvest the dates in my plantation, does it reach khamsatu awsuq or not khamsatu awsuq? If we say that it reaches khamsatu awsuq, that most of the dates that are ripe reaches khamsatu awsuq. So now it is compulsory upon me to do the calculation. Then it depends whether the watering of the plantation, is it from my own or I'm using the natural sources. If I use from the natural sources, what is the percentage? If I also use the watering from my own, and from there we can calculate the amount of dates that is compulsory upon us to pay for zakah. Whether it's 5%, whether it's 10%, whether it's 7.5%, whether it's 8%, it depends. It depends on the watering. So when it comes to fruit, the author mentioned bi budu with salah. Budu with salah meaning ripeness. So for example, if you ask the dates expert, how do you know whether the date is ripe or not? There is a color to it. There is a specific color. Those who are expert in dates, they will tell you that if you see a certain color, that this particular date is ripe already. This particular date is ripe already. So once it is ripe, can be consumed, khalas. We say the obligation of zakah comes. Before that, no obligation of zakah. This is pertaining to fruits. Likewise, pertaining to grapes. Likewise, pertaining to grapes. But when it comes to seedlings like flour and rice, now this is different. We do not look at the color, but ishtidadul hab, yani it becomes hard. There is a certain texture of hardness in seedlings that we can know that it is ripe. For example, how you know rice is ripe already to be harvested. The people who are experts in this thing, they will tell you. They will tell you when the plantations reach a certain texture, then it means that the rice has ripened. Likewise, pertaining to flour, wheat. How do you know the wheat is ripe? You can harvest. So the people who are working in the fields will tell you there are certain signs that you know that this particular plantation has come into its ripeness. So once it is ripe, then the calculation of zakah comes in. The calculation of zakah comes in. Then the author mentioned was sunna kharsu samari ala malikihi. Now and this is anything in the Arabic language and they call it al-khars. Al-khars. What is this? This is a type of calculation. The people who are expert, al-kharis, the person who does this estimation, he can look at the tree. He look at the date tree. He can tell you how much fruit does this tree produce. This knowledge is called what? Al-khars. It is a type of knowledge on plants. So he will walk from one tree to another tree. One tree to another tree. He will write down this tree, this amount of kilo. This tree, this amount of kilo. So you just have to add up. You add up all the weight of the dates from all of the trees. That's how you know how much you will harvest. That's how you know how much you will harvest. So once you know the amount of harvesting, whether it reaches the nisab or it does not reach the nisab, then you have to pay your zakah. You have to pay your zakah because now you have known how much is your harvest. What is the weight of your harvest? If it reaches khamsatu awsuq, then khalas, you have to take at 5% or 6% or 7% or 10%. Then you have to pay. You have to pay your zakah before you engage in buying and selling. Before you engage in buying and selling. Now, then he says, "Wa sunnah kharsu samari ala malikihi." This thing about khars sunnah, the author mentioned ala malikihi, on the owner. If the owner knows how to do khars, but if the owner say I do not know, what happens? The imam, the Islamic emirate, will send an expert to the plantations and he will do the calculation for you. That's how we know how much of the harvesting. And this knowledge is still present until today. In Yemen, in Saudi, for example, places where there are a lot of dates. So there will be people who will do khars. When time of harvest, they will come and they will do the khars. Now, continue.
وشرط الخارس أن يكون ذكرا مسلما حرا عدلا عارفا ويضمن المالك الواجب في ذمته ويقبل ثم يتصرف في جميع الثمر.
Then he mentioned وشرط الخارس. So the person who does this action of khars, there are conditions and not everybody can become. There are conditions. What is the conditions? Number one, zakaran musliman, he must be a male Muslim. Non-Muslim cannot be, because all these things have amana. A person who does this calculation, he must have amana. Hurran adlan arifan, must be a free man, not a slave. Adlan, this situation is tough. Must be adil. We mentioned many a times in adil and isu, a person who doesn't perform a major sin and who does not perform minor sin continuously, and a person who does not do anything that tarnish his reputation. So this adil, a person that can be trusted. The last condition is arif, must be knowledgeable, because this thing is about knowledge. He will look at the tree and he will tell you how much the tree will produce. So it requires any certain type of knowledge. وَيُضَمِّنُ الْمَالِكُ الْوَاجِبَ فِي ذِمَّتِهِ. So the owner, after he does the khars, then he will testify. He will testify that based on my judgment, this is my zakah. This is the amount of fruits or that I'm obliged to pay the zakah. Yeah, he has to do tadmin. Tadmin is like a declaration, meaning you declare that, like nowadays, for example, you have to sign, correct, not? Like income tax, for example, you declare that your income is such and such and such. So you give to the government. Then the government will decide how much, correct, not? So the Malik, yani the owner, yani will do a declaration. Yani after he does any the khars, then he will write down. He will write down and based on my judgment, this is any my, this is any the amount any of my dates, any for example, or the amount any of my grapes. When it comes into seedlings, any there is no khars. Khars any is only for summer. Khars any is only for summer. When it comes into rice and flour, no choice, and you have to harvest first, and you have to wait. Then you have to look whether it reaches nisab or not nisab. Khars any is only for fruits like dates and grapes. So these are the conditions. وَيُضَمِّنُ الْمَالِكُ الْوَاجِبَ فِي ذِمَّتِهِ. فِي ذِمَّتِهِ, meaning he make a declaration that it is upon him, yani to pay any zakah of such and such. وَيَقْبَلُ, and he accept. ثُمَّ يَنْصَرِفُ فِي جَمِيعِ الثَّمَرِ. What you call it? Then only he can trade any with his foods. Whether he wants any to eat from it, or whether he wants any to sell it, he can only any be permissible after he does any diskhars. Clear, inshallah? Yani the first thing any that the person has to do, that he must make this declaration first. How much any is my zakah? Then only you can spend any on the fruits. This is what any the author any is saying. It is not permissible any to sell any of the fruits before khars. Haram, not permissible. So zakah yani has to be ascertained. How much any is my zakah on my plantation first, before any I spend. So this knowledge is important, especially for people who have plantations. If they don't know this, they will be spending and selling and all these things. Then after that, they do not know how much is zakah. This is not permissible. So he has to ascertain. He must make this declaration. Tatmin, that we call it. Then only after that, he can spend. He can spend any on the foods. طيب. ثم ينصرف في جميع الثمر. يعني meaning he can spend any on the foods. Continue.
باب زكاة النقد وزكاته ربع العشر ولو من معدن ونصاب الذهب 20 مثقالا خالصة.
In Muqaddimah Hadramiyyah, this is the only thing about zakah on plantations, and very brief. So we have completed any zakah in the plantation. We have completed zakah on animals. We have completed zakah on plantations. Now when we speak about the zakah of normally what we discuss a lot, zakah of an-naqd. Naqd that is meant here, it is gold and silver. Why it is called naqd? Naqd is a currency basically. Naqd in the Arabic language, it means a medium of exchange. Why gold and silver? Because gold and silver are used as medium of exchange. Gold and silver is used as medium of exchange. Anything that is used as a medium of exchange, it carries the ruling of gold and silver. Nowadays, we do not use gold and silver for medium of exchange, but we use our paper money. Correct or not? Then there is zakah on paper money, because this is a result of analogy, qiyas. Although paper money has no value, but it takes the medium of exchange, the illah, that has in gold and in silver. So that is why we have to pay zakah on the money. Now continue. He said, wa zakatuhu rubul ushur. When it comes into zakah of gold and silver, is rubu ushur. Rubu ushur is 2.5% basically. Rubu al-ushur. Al-ushur is how many? 10%. Rubu of 10%, 2.5%. This is the meaning of rubu al-ushur. Clear, inshallah? So normally to make things easy, and you say 2.5%. Walau min ma'din. Ma'din is like an ore. For example, those working in mines, they take out like one chunk of stone. Then inside there is gold. So he has to take into consideration how much is the gold. So if it reaches 85 gram, ishruna misqal. Ishrun misqal is about 85 grams. This is based on the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and ishruna misqal. 85 grams. If it reaches this nisab, then it is compulsory upon him to pay 2.5%. Walau min ma'din. Yani ma'din meaning it is like a mixture and like a boulder. But if you break it and you melt it, you can get the gold. Wa nisabu dhahabi 20 misqal khalisah. Khalisah yani meaning pure gold, not mixed with anything. Ishruna misqal, it is about 85 grams. Continue.
والمثقال 24 قيراطا ونصاب الفضة 100 درهم إسلامي ودرهم 17 قيراطا إلا خمس قيراط.
Now this yani all any types of measurements. The author yani mentioned وَنِصَابُ الذَّهَبِ 20 مِثْقَالًا خَالِصَةً. Then after that he mentioned وَالْمِثْقَال. What is any misqal? He said misqal is 24 قِرَاطًا. Yani in the commentary he said وَهُوَ 72 حَبَّةً مِنْ شَعِيرٍ. 72 حَبَّةً يعني من شعير. يعني barley 72 any barley seeds. This is any 1 kirat. So you times this any 24. So that is what any we got. Yani 1 misqal. In grams any you take any 85 any grams and you divide by 20. That is 1 misqal in grams. So it's about how many? It is about 4 1/4. 4 1/4. That is why the dinar is 4 1/4 gram. Dinar and Islami. Ishruna mithqal. This is calculation any measurements any that are used in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Wa nisabul fiddati 100 dirham Islami. 200 any dirhams. 200 dirham. This is based on the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Laisa fi aqalli min 20 dinar shay. Laisa fima duna khamsati awaqin min al-wariqi sadaqah. Yani based on the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yani the Prophet and he mentioned anything that is less than 5 awaq, there is no zakah. So one yani uqiyah is 40 dirham. So 40 and 40 you times any 5 and that's how any we get 200 any dirhams. وَدِرْهَمْ 17 كِرَاطًا إِلَّا 5 kirat. Now all this any are the calculation. So 1 dirham any he said is 17 any kirat. So earlier any we know any what is any 1 kirat. So this is how any we know how much it is 1 dirham. So the nisab any for silver is 200 any dirham. Continue.
وما زاد على ذلك فبحسابه ولا شيء في المغشوش حتى يبلغ خالصه نصابا.
Now what happens if there is a mixture? Maghshush meaning, for example, you have gold mixed with iron, silver mixed with copper. Type how we want to pay any zakah, we have to take into consideration if gold khalis meaning pure, how much? For example, I have coins, I have gold coins that is mixed with steel. For example, 40% steel, 60% gold. Then I have to look into how much in the collection I have. For example, if I have any 100 any of these coins, now the amount any of gold, 60% any of gold, if I were to times any 100, does it reach any 85 grams? Does it reach any the nisab? If it reach any the nisab, then I have to pay any zakah. So we take into consideration any what is any the pure gold, even though it is mixed any with other types any of metals. Now continue.
ولا في الحلي المباح ولم يقصد كنزه.
Now huliyul mubah is basically ornaments any that are worn, like ring, necklace, bracelet. Huli, this is the meaning of huli. No zakah on these types of ornaments, they are worn. And then we have another term that is mentioned as al-mubah. This is the term any mubah, any meaning. It must not any be in a state anywhere it becomes any haram or tabzir. Yani if a person any keeps ornaments any that are so many that it is much more than the average woman. Much more than the average woman any of a society. We say there is zakah. There is zakah any on the ornaments. But if it is mubah any, if it is any within the normal situation of the woman any in a society, then there is no zakah. Clear, inshallah? So let me give you an example. And this question I always ask. In Singapore, what is considered to be huliyul mubah? Maybe you all can do research. Huh? What is the amount of huliyul mubah in Singapore? Meaning, if you ask any the question, normally in Singapore, how many grams of gold, for example, does a normal woman wear in Singapore? How much? How many? Meaning anything that is more than this and is not considered to be mubah. Let's say it is 100 grams. Let's say. If a person and he has more than 100 grams, nowadays zakah. Compulsory. Even though it is ornaments. But we say that she and he has gone any overboard. Normally, the woman in this society and don't wear that much. Clear, inshallah. This is called huliyul mubah. So the thing about ornaments, it is not, generally we say there is no zakah. Zakah can be compulsory. And if a person is excessive, and for example, and he buys any jewelry, any 3 kilograms of jewelry. Now, this one we say, there is zakah or not zakah? There is zakah. There is zakah, because we say the norm is not 3 kilograms and is much more any than the norm of the society. In lam yuqsad kanzu, even though he got no any intention to keep it, because the intention is to wear, even though, but because the author he mentioned that it is not wajib. Huliyul mubah, it is not wajib. Even though he if he doesn't have any the intention to keep it, kanz here meaning to keep it. Now he is buying this gold to wear, there is no zakah. There is no zakah. Naam. Continue.
ويشترط الحول في النقد وفي الزكاة الخمس ولا حول فيه ولا في المعدن وشرط الركاز أن يكون نقدا نصابا ومن دفين الجاهلية وفي موات أو ملك أحياه.
Now when the author mentioned يشترط الحول في النقد. Haul. Any haul here is 1 year. So if there is any no haul, no zakah. This is a condition. When comes to a naqd, comes to gold and silver, there must be haul. Yani 1 year. 1 year here, Islamic calendar, not Gregorian calendar. This is another thing, and we have to take note, because a lot of people are confused in this. We only refer to Islamic calendar. So if you have money, for example, reaches nisab, you have to know when is the date of the Islamic calendar, whether it's in Haram or Rabiul Awwal, Rabiul Thani. That after any 1 year, then only there is zakah. Wa fi rikazi khumus. But when it comes into rikas is dafinul jahiliyah. Rikas, yani a person found like a treasure, and the treasure dates back before the time of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This rikas. Then the person he has to come out 20%, khumus. 20% of what he found. For example, in Egypt recently, they found the tomb of one of the pharaoh. The tomb of one of the pharaoh. So usually pharaoh, last time when they are buried, they bury with them all the gold and their ornaments. A person he dug the grave, for example, he found this is the treasure of Fir'aun. This is called rikas. But of course, normally he belongs to the state, and the state he will take. But if so happens a person own a land, for example, and then you found treasure of the pharaoh, so you can take the treasure, but you have to pay 20%. 20% is zakah. Wala hawla fihi, there is no hawl in rikas. No need to wait 1 year. Meaning at the point where you discover the gold, you pay on the spot. Wala fil ma'din. Likewise, when it comes to ma'din, a person, for example, buys a plot of land, and then he dig for gold. There is no hawl. The moment you dig for gold, the moment the gold reaches this up, on the spot, and you have to come out zakah. You don't have to wait for 1 year. So there is no hawl in rikas, there is no hawl in ma'din. Clear, inshallah? Wa shartu rikasi an yakuna naqdan nisaban. Rikas also, it must be nisab. 85 grams for gold. Wa min dafinil jahiliyah. It must be dafinil jahiliyah, not after Islam. Because after Islam, it becomes luqata. Maybe you write this down. After Islam, it becomes luqata, not rikas. What is the difference between rikas and luqata? Rikas dates back before the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Jahiliyah, in the times of Jahiliyah, meaning before the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. After the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, now it becomes luqata. What is the meaning of luqata? Luqata is wealth that you found. Wealth that you found. It belongs to somebody else. Wa fi mawatin aw milki ahya. It is found in mawat. Mawat is a land that is not owned by anyone. Mawat is a land that is not owned by anyone. Or it is found in a land that is owned. So even it is found in a land that is not owned by anyone, it still becomes luqata if the wealth is wealth that comes after the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. 200 years old, 300 years old, this is luqata, not rikas. Clear inshallah. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.